It is necessary for the recording of sound to convert the sound waves to corresponding changes in light. The sound waves produced by my voice are transmitted through the air to the microphone, where these sound waves are converted to changes in an electric current. These variations in the electric current are then amplified and used to control the light. This varying beam of light falling on the photoelectric cell produces variations in the electric current, which are directly proportional to the variations in the light beam. The sound track. As the varying electrical current in the photoelectric cell is small, a vacuum tube amplifier is required to increase it to the point where it will operate a loudspeaker. Sound track.
Welcome to the Occult Rejects. In this episode, I got the usual suspect herself. I got Lisa with me. What's up, Lisa? Thank you very much.
How's it going?
I'm doing very well this morning, and
awesome.
Very happy to be doing this episode again with you.
Yes,
I'm truly enjoying. It's more like informative, or I guess informational or awareness.
Well, I'm learning a lot. Like digging into this stuff, I've learned so much, especially about history.
Yeah, that's what it is too. I think the historical stuff behind occultism and magic, I think if we were to know more of it, could kind of maybe know more of what's going on now, or at least broaden our horizons on what might be going on.
I think so.
Bring awareness to exactly how deep this stuff gets.
Yeah.
But today, in this episode, we are going to be covering kind of like older occultists, from history that maybe not everybody is too familiar with. And some of the people who listen to this channel, I'm sure I've heard some of them, and maybe all of them. But overall, I think there'll be some people in here that people may never have known of, and it might be interesting to know what they did and everything else that went along with it. So I'll get into it. Let me pull up these slides here. And the first one, I got these names too. Zosimos of Panopolis. And he was also known by Zosimos the Alchemist. And he was a Greco-Egyptian alchemist and Gnostic mystic who lived at the end of the 3rd and the beginning of the 4th century. He was born in Panopolis, present-day Akhmim, in the southern part of Roman Egypt. He wrote the oldest known books, and again, this is, who knows if it's all correct, but this is, the ideas behind this person. He wrote the oldest known books on alchemy, which he called Cherokee Meta. It's very interesting. It's almost like putting Meta and Cherokee and Indian together almost.
Yeah.
It looks weird. Yeah, the word itself. Using the Greek word for things made by hand. Pieces of this work survive in the original Greek language and in translations into Syriac, Arabic. And he is one of about 40 authors represented in a compendium of alchemical writings that was supposedly put together in around 7th or 8th century AD in Constantinople. And copies of this exist in a manuscript that is in Venice, Paris. So they have taken his stuff and other people's and I guess compiled it, and for some reason they think it's important there.
Yeah. Just
like, not to bring it up to try to, advertise, but like yesterday, I went and looked at the Ars Notoria. That's from 1225. Mm-hmm. Yale has it. They probably have it for a reason.
Yeah.
It's not like, that looks cool. I'm sure people will come to see this for free. You know what I'm saying? Because, technically, I'm not paying to go look at the book either. I don't know.
Yeah.
Arabic translations of texts by Zosimos were discovered in 1995 in a copy of the book Keys of Mercy and Secrets of Wisdom by, and I think we have mentioned this guy, Ibn al-Hasan, a Persian alchemist. The translations were incomplete and pretty much like confusing at the time. The famous index of Arabic books, Kitab al-Fahrist by Ibn al-Nadim, mentions their earliest translations of 4 books by Zosimos. But like kind of like almost due to the inconsistency and like translating and stuff, these texts were attributed to the names Zosimos, Dosimos, and or Remos. So what they're kind of getting at is like they're even saying they think some of his stuff has even been released but under incorrect, I guess, names because of the translation. Also, it is possible that 2 of them are translations of the same book. A historian, Fuad Sigin, a historian of Islamic science, supposedly has found 15 manuscripts of Zosimos in 6 libraries that are at Tehran, Cairo, Istanbul, Gotha, Dublin, and Rampur.
And they were all over.
Mm-hmm. Michelle Martins analyzed what is known about these manuscripts in her translation of Zosimos, concluding that the Arabic tradition seems extremely rich and promising. That they think that those are probably some of the more on point. Zosimos provided one of the first definitions of alchemy as the study of the composition of waters, movement, growth, embodying and disembodying, and drawing the spirits from bodies and binding the spirits within bodies. That was his idea of what I guess alchemy was, or definition of it. In general, Zosimos' understanding of alchemy reflects the influence of Hermetic and Gnostic spiritualities. He had asserted that the fallen angels taught the arts of metallurgy to the women they married, an idea also recorded in the Book of Enoch and later repeated in the Gnostic Apocryphon of John. In a fragment preserved by Zencelus, Zosimos wrote, "The ancient and divine writings say that the angels became enamored of women, and descending, taught them all the works of nature. From them, therefore, is the first tradition, Chema, concerning these arts. For they called this book Chema, and hence the science of chemistry takes its name."
That's cool. I didn't know that. That's neat.
The external process of metallic transmutation, the transformations of lead and copper into silver and gold, were said to always to mirror a inner process of purification and redemption. That is something that I have. I mean, listen, there could maybe be ways through actually screwing around with magic. Maybe you can actually start changing this stuff, but I do think for the most part, it is all eternal stuff going on in you or spiritually when it comes to alchemy. That's my opinion. There are 2 sciences and 2 wisdoms, that of the Egyptians and that of the Hebrew, which latter is confirmed by divine justice. The science and wisdom of the most excellent dominate the one and the other. Both originate in olden times. The origin is without a king, autonomous and immaterial. It is not concerned with material and corrupted bodies. It operates without submitting to strange influences, supported by prayer and divine grace. The symbol of chemistry is drawn from the creation by its adepts, who cleanse and save the divine soul, bound in the elements, and who free the divine spirit from the mixture with the flesh. This is all stuff that I have said before. In my opinion, when it comes to magic, you are cleansing yourself of the flesh. As the sun, S-U-N, is, so to speak, a flower of the fire, simultaneously the heaven sun, the right eye of the world. So copper, when it blooms, that is when it takes the color of gold, through purification becomes a terrestrial sun, which is the king of the earth, as the sun is king on heaven. I find that very interesting how after the sun, when you fall down the tree, that is where you do get the prince and the princess. And it is my opinion that once you get to king and queen, you're kind of like getting out of the flesh. So again, like, yeah. Could the prince really be the king on earth in a sense, but not really a king until you've conquered both? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. And then the maturation of the prince into a king.
Yes,
and then
exactly.
Metamorphosis of it all.
Yes, the alchemy and the change.
Yes.
Greek alchemists used what they called, oh man, I left that in Greek. And it means both divine water and sulfurous. For Zosimos, the alchemical vessel was imagined as a baptismal font, and the tincturing vapors of mercury and sulfur were likened to the purifying waters of baptism, which perfected and redeemed the Gnostic initiate. Zosimos drew upon the hermetic image of the crater or mixing bowl, a symbol of the divine mind in which the hermetic initiate was baptized and purified in the course of a visionary ascent through the heavens and into the transcendent realms. See, what I love about this is, like, even like the stuff that he had said, or people that are going over the stuff that this man had said, they are not giving it the woo-woo. They are actually saying the same shit that I've been saying for a long time. This is all about your soul.
Yeah.
And removing the shit tied to it. Similar ideas of the spiritual baptism in the waters of the transcendent polaroma are characteristic of the Sethian Gnostic texts unearthed at Nag Hammadi. So, the image of the alchemical vessel at baptismal font is central to his visions in this book that I'm going to start showing also. He does have the book of pictures, which I'm going to go through and show some of this art that he has already. I have up already. I just thought some of this stuff was very interesting. I do even wonder if that's almost kind of like a Janus situation going on the left, even though there's a tree in the middle. Is it still like... That's very much, to me, very David Lynch-like when you see like two people having a conversation. I think is him showing, in a sense, Janus. And that's when David Lynch always has a light bulb above both of them that's like flicking and going off crazy, to show you the whole electric shit going on. But
and the intentional differentiation of the colors.
Yes. And then the one on the right, I just thought that one was pretty wild. As you can see, that star too that's above the hand. And just very, very weird looking stuff. I thought it's interesting. Again, you got that same star symbol again. Which kind of almost brings back to me like the image that you sometimes see behind people's heads in Catholicism and art.
Yes.
Jesus.
The
Mary.
halo, this circular thing.
Yeah. Can't even call that a halo. If you really want to think about it, you know what I'm saying? Because, like, that's not what a halo normally gets drawn like.
No, right. No, exactly.
We'll be like, oh, no, that's just an old artistic look of a halo. They didn't know how to draw a halo then.
I think you had mentioned in one of your episodes that the whole eclipse thing of that it could be like an eclipse, like your head's eclipsing.
Ecliptic. Oh, like look over here on the right-hand side.
Yeah. On
top of her at the end. Technically, that almost looks like an eclipse. What is that, like an upside-down head or something that's coming down?
Yeah.
It's very weird.
Right.
We got some more pictures. That kind of reminded me a little bit of Vesica Pisces. I think one of the reasons why I wanted to save that too, very kind of Voynich manuscriptish looking with some of the flowers that are depicted in there, I think.
Gotcha.
And on the other side again, they got that same pointed star on the head, that shape right there again.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've had even wondered doing a series with Jin the Ninja, on trying to match Tantra like symbolism to Kabbalah. There is a lot of times you will see in their art, they have something like that, but it's not on their heads. It's as if it's a big circle with a small little one in it, and then a big circle and a little bit bigger of a circle in it. And I was telling him the last time I was on, I was like, yo, I was like, if you want to go back and listen to what I was saying, I think happens with your eyes when it comes to magic. You are seeing that with these symbols over and over and over again inside these images that you've picked.
Oh, wow.
It would be one pupil small and one pupil big.
Yeah.
I mean, that may not be that there.
time.
But I also, like, again, in my opinion, when this starts to happen in my mind's eye, I start to see an eclipse. So again, I mean, could it still be referencing the same thing? Is that how the eclipse is made? Is the way I have no idea.
Right.
I don't know what's going on. This stuff I thought was cool just because of like even how like they added stuff on the sides, showing you drawing star to star here, like is that importance of something. But yeah, I just wanted to show those real quick before I started going back into it. So that was the Book of Pictures. This book is divided into 13 chapters, each of them being introduced by a separate image. 2 chapters contain a whole series of images, which according to Zosimos' statements, are meant to be pondered upon in order to better understand his teaching. And that's even like something that is hugely said in ceremonial magic, or at least my experience from the OTO and other people that are into ceremonial magic or orders. Tarot cards are highly suggested to just meditate on. Look at it and don't actually have any preconceived notions and see if like just something new pops out to you. So it's very much kind of like the same advice, I guess. Wow. The whole text gives a lively dialogue between an alchemical couple, Zosimos, and his female student, Theosebia, if I'm saying that correctly.
I think so.
It reports Theosebia's complaining about unclear statements of Zosimos, as well as Zosimos' anger about her inability to understand his statements. That
whole married couple already.
Or, again, very much of your brain arguing with both sides.
Oh, yes. Yes.
I think. Male and female. Yeah. Both sides of the pillow are arguing back and forth for control. Yeah. Yeah. At first sight, the dialogue deals with the question upon how to understand statements of alchemical philosophers like Agathodimon, Democritus, Isis, Moses, Maria, Ostanes, as well as with questions about technical aspects of the alchemical work. But again and again, Zosimos emphasizes that he does not talk about the substances and processes as such as matter, but they have to be understood symbolically. Which is something that I think is like kind of, I guess maybe part of the reason of me doing some of my informative stuff and kind of like me making some of my comments about people screwing up, unfortunately, the understanding of occultism, because they're taking things at face value and not looking at it symbolically at all. Zosimos describes the alchemical work by means of a series of images and says to Theosebia, "What I wrote and told you, and with the picture I made for you, with me in it, I gave you what you need to know, and this should be enough for you."
Damn.
So I'm getting tired of your shit, woman.
Yeah. Well, I can understand that. I'm sure it's hard for him to explain it with mere words. And when she doesn't get it, the frustration that he has to...
Oh, I get it, because that's why I don't stay on social media, because when I look at other people's ideas on this stuff, it's not even people I know or people that even have podcasts. I'm not going that way with it either. It's just like I don't even want to... It's disheartening to see the ignorance. And I just can't look at the stuff anymore. And nobody wants to hear me, so...
It's not true.
Zosimos' teaching is based on the one hand on his own dream visions reported in the text, and another source for his teachings was his suffering of a passionate love relationship to Theosebia, being not allowed to be simply lived out physically.
Ooh.
That is even something I think has come up. I have mentioned this. I can't remember. I don't know if it was with you or someone else. I'm trying. Mary Jane from Megadeth. The song from Megadeth. I do think is like a love-hate song for the Scarlet Horn, the sense knowing that like you're like in love with like Oh man, I don't even know how to explain this. I'm just making it sound weird. I think a lot of love songs are kind of showing the love-hate relationship between the feminine energy that's keeping us bound. We are in love with the earthly things that we have come to know here in the flesh, but then we also love that experience that we have outside of it. And then the fact that you have to come back, you can be like, fuck you, bitch, I didn't want to come back.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think kind of some ways in that, maybe that's where we're going.
There's so much of that even in life, because you have to like leave the nest in order to transform. You have to leave the earth in order to transform. You have to leave the womb, which is in a mom, to transform. Yeah. It's just back and forth.
And then he even states that these images depict his own inner psychic process of transformation.
There you go.
This is also, I think, a lot of art is people showing that. You know, in their own experience, for their own experiences of messing with magic. Zosimos drew symbolic images of his own death and resurrection as explanation for Theosebia. And again, I think that can be very, again, going back to what I've said before, when it comes to magic, I do think there is a little literal death and rebirth. So you drawing yourself like that is telling the person, I died and came back. The book can be regarded as the earliest historical description of an alchemical work based on a psychic transformation. And it is a testimony of the painstaking quest to understand not only the problem, but also the meaning of attraction, repulsion, and ultimate reconciliation between the outer male and female, as well as the inner fire and water.
There you go.
A process that is described with the basic substances mirroring the very elemental collective character of the process. The process. In this book, we find fragments of writings from the sulfurs, which are ascribed to Zosimos and from his letters to Theosebia. In the course of the dialogue, those fragments seem to be interrupted by her questions and by further explanations. By this, Zosimos' teaching is presented in an easier and more understandable way. With regard to content and style, there are similarities between both books, the Book of Pictures and the Book of Keys. Up to now, only one single Arabic manuscript of the Book of Pictures is in existence. In the fourth part of the book, the Book of the Rank of the Sage, its author, Maslama al-Kuturbi, quotes extensively from the Book of Pictures. The Book of Pictures itself is influenced by, supposedly is influenced by ancient Egyptian thinking, and its iconography showing relations to kind of like pharaoh iconography and having motifs paralleling Egyptian books of the underworld regarding the inner and outer relationship between man and women or between psychic male and female aspects. The Book of Pictures forms a cultural bridge between pharaonic thoughts and European medieval alchemy. The book is written as commentary in 10 chapters on the Book of the 10 Keys as ascribed to Democritus. As the beginning of the book is written, the commentary was Zosimos' last text written for Theosebia. The book gives an essence of Zosimos' teachings, as the preamble says that the book is so clear and understandable that after reading Theosebia, you should understand the alchemical work. So that was just somebody that I thought seemed to have a pretty, I guess, like in my opinion, had some sort of an impact in alchemy. Maybe not maybe not everybody knew who that person was. So yeah, and that's all I got for that person. Let me just go back, actually, skim through some of the pictures again. I thought they were pretty interesting. A lot of different things to look at. I didn't want to take up too much of the show going over, There you go. Now on to you.
Oh, that was good. I picked Zoroaster because I didn't know anything about him and I wanted to learn about him. So that's kind of selfish of me, but I picked him anyway.
Good for you.
So I had no idea how influential he was. So that was a big part of it as well. So Zoroaster, also known as Zarathustra. So Zarathustra was well known in Iran and was an Iranian prophet and reformer of the ancient religion of Iran. Outside of Iran, he was known as Zoroaster. So in Iran, he was known as Zarathustra, which is the Greek translation of his name. Zoroaster was said to have been the Iranian Persian priest turned prophet who challenged the traditions of the Iranian religion at the time and ultimately founded the religious movement that came to be known as Zoroastrianism, which is a devotion to Mazda or Ahura Mazda, and was the first monotheistic religion. Zarathustra, which means owner of great camels, him and his family were part of a nomadic pastoralist society. There is no consensus as to when he lived, was born, family lineage, or anything like that, but I think they all agree that he probably existed between the dates of 7th and 6th century BCE, and it's commonly accepted that's when he did it based on, when all this stuff was coming out or being written about him. The only evidence and only sources of info on Zarathustra comes from references in the Avesta, but did not particularly cover details of his life, nor the people he may have interacted with. And to complicate the matter further, once Zoroastrianism took off, everybody wanted to claim him as, he was born here. No, he was from here. And so everybody started saying no. So then even more so, you don't even know where he was from. I'm sure he is from Iran, but, with a name like that. It has been suggested that Zoroaster was a priest in the ancient Iranian religion by the age of 15. He was educated at an early age and then became a priest, which I believe suggests that the family probably had some sort of means, because you don't become a priest and don't go to work or anything like that, or they didn't send you off to get, some sort of profession. So he leaves home by the age of 20. He was a devout priest of the early Iranian religion, or the ancient Persian religion is what they called it back then. And it was a polytheistic belief system where many gods were presided over by Ahura Mazda. And then sometime around the age of 30, he attended a festival of the rites of spring, saying prayers by a river when he began to have visions of the god Ahura Mazda. There's a slightly different version to that story that I wanted to include, and it was just that, so he's on the riverbank, a bright entity appeared, calling himself Vohu Maha, that's probably not correct, but that's kind of how it's spelled, saying that he had been sent by Ahura Mazda to deliver a message. I thought this was funny, that the religion of the people was being practiced wrong. So I was like, how many times have gods come down and said, you're getting it all wrong? Like, all the time. Everybody gets it wrong every single time. I just thought that was
that's great.
Ahura Mazda was not interested in animal sacrifices, but in moral behavior. He told Zarathustra that he had been chosen by the one true God to preach the news and bring proper understanding with the divine. Zarathustra claimed to have received messages in the form of answers to questions while in deep prayerful meditation, memorizing them, repeating them to his disciples as a living scripture passed down through the generations in the ancient language called Avestan. It wouldn't be until after several years of preaching his newfound belief system that he gained the support of King Vistaspa and ultimately helped Zoroaster spread his belief. And then under King Cyrus the Great, that's when you see Zoroastrianism going all throughout Iran and then continuing under the Persian empires that followed. So the early Iranian religion kept only oral tradition. So therefore nothing was written down regarding rituals, regarding belief systems, or anything like that. And when Zoroastrian faith was adopted during the Achaemenid Empire, and then the Parthian Empire, it wouldn't be until the Parthian Empire, which was around 200 BCE, that they actually started to write things down and record the conversation that occurred between Zarathustra and God. The written form of the oral tradition became known as the Avesta, describing the vision of a single all-powerful, all-good God who took a personal interest in the lives and morality of human beings. What is known from Zoroastrian scriptures and the Avesta was that there was a priestly class called the Magi, and worship was done outdoors at shrines known as fire temples. Sacrifices in the form of grains, animals, precious metals, and objects were offered, but also became properties of the priests, whom you can imagine grew wealthy from collecting all of these offerings, and ended up like buying up some of the major farmlands and controlling the area. I thought, yeah, that sounds kind of typical. Okay.
Yeah, even when it came to like, there was even when it came to like grimoires and stuff. I mean, there was scam artists out there with that.
Yes. I mean, yeah.
At like some points, like,
yeah,
they were selling for like 50 lira back then.
That's crazy.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. Everybody, yeah. It's a never ending thing. There's always somebody gonna.
Yeah. I think I was reading somebody's opinion on it because I'm covering the Armadillo with Megan from 7 Degrees.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and I was like kind of like reading, I guess it was Francis King's like opinion on like the Armadillo and grimoires. That's in the beginning of the book.
Okay.
I mean, I think he even said himself, basically, as long as there's a want for that shit, somebody's going to write it regardless if it's real or not. Somebody's going to pay for it.
That's so true. That's so true. Of everything.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that was good. Zoroastrianism is presumably the world's oldest monotheistic religion, founded by the prophet Zarathustra, and to date appears to have been the first religious thinker to conceive an eschatological myth concerning a future savior rescuing the world from evil and the day of judgment being central. So that sounded very familiar to me. Zarathustra presumably was said to have instructed Pythagoras in Babylon, inspiring Chaldean doctrines on astrology and magic, hence being given the title of the founder of astrology and magic. I didn't know that they had given him that title, which was interesting. He was a priest of a certain Ahura Mazda, and all that is known of Zarathustra's doctrine must... Yeah, well, yeah, he's influenced that. Must have reached Western Iran prior to the time of Aristotle, because it was not until 300 BC that Aristotle started to talk about dualism. And dualism is one of the tenets of Zoroastrianism. Then it's the 1st century BCE, the first proof of the Zoroastrian calendar in Iran surfaces, as well as the gods bearing a combination of Greek and Iranian names. His theory and essentially the framework on dualism had exact counterparts. Zoroastrianism at its core was not insistently monotheistic as compared to Islam or Judaism. However, it represented the original attempt to unify the worship of a supreme god against the backdrop of polytheism, comparable to those at the time, like Greeks and they said Latins. I'm assuming they mean Romans, Indians, and so forth. So dualism was the other outlining feature of Zoroastrianism, as I mentioned earlier. With good and evil fighting an unequal battle, this concept was established and elaborated well upon in Zoroastrianism and may have been influential in all the messianic beliefs such as Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Ahura Mazda, or Wise Lord, was most likely the chief god of the pre-Zoroastrian religion, and alongside Ahura Mazda was Mithra, and that became a common word for the sun. And Mithra was considered an important and possibly occupied equal position. This is pre-Zoroastrianism. So when Zoroastrian comes on to the stage, the worship of gods was still occurring out in the open, and they practice it in the same manner, and apparently is the oldest continuous enacted ritual known to date. It's for the purpose of coming into communion with the divine for a specific purpose. So, yeah. And these images are basically images from the Avesta.
See, that's something I wanted to mention before you moved on, too. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of these symbols, I mean, I even think kind of another reason why I've been picking, like, we've been doing, like, some of the stuff from the past is, like, you will see, like, we're still seeing the same symbology. In so many different things, the same shapes.
Yes.
You know, it's going to have a little bit of a different artistic flair, because just of the person's personal experience or just the area, but you see the same shapes of things done over and over again.
Yeah.
I think.
I think so too. And it didn't matter the region. That's it, or the language, or the culture.
That's what I'm
that was
getting at.
one of the unifying theme was the symbology.
Why I think having a true magical experience is understood by all that have it. It is a unified experience to some extent.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
Well, symbology was like math. Everybody understood it. It didn't matter what, but like what you're saying, it transcends language. So, yeah, that's interesting. Zoroastrians. So I got into a little bit of the belief system because I thought that was interesting because of his influence on that religion. So Zoroastrians do not believe completely that they are leading free and moral lives despite their doctrine of free choice. Mazda and these beings of light kept the dark force Angra Mainyu, his legion of demons, spirits of darkness, at bay in a never-ending conflict for control of the world. In between were humans and their free will to choose either. And I'll go into it a little bit. The thing is that what took me off guard is that I had heard how the Messianic religions came from somewhere else. I had heard that it came from Egyptian belief system. I had heard about Zoroastrianism, but I never knew in depth about it. I had no idea how exact it is to the Messianic or the Abrahamic religions. The whole good versus evil, light versus dark, Judgment Day, the eschaton, the going to heaven, going to hell. The only difference is that they do regard nature and remind me of the Green New Deal. They regard nature and preservation of the earth as paramount as well. And I think I told you this. I was like, man, everything that they're talking about, like in the news in the background, it makes me feel like they're going to start pushing Zoroastrianism as the main religion, as that we all unite under, because it would, I don't know. It just seems it includes all of the tenets that they're kind of pushing.
Gotcha, yeah.
So, but yeah, so Ahura Mazda granted power of choice. It's nothing more powerful. Not even Ahura Mazda could or would try to subvert it. Same thing with, our Abrahamic gods in terms of free will. So it's influenced Judaism, Christianity, and Islam because it contains dualism, angelology, eschatology in their belief system. Zoroastrianism was the ancient pre-Islamic religion of Iran and has had influence on Voltaire, Nietzsche, and Freddie Mercury. It's also influenced George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones character, Azor Ahi, or Lord of Light, and as well as the car brand Mazda. I don't know if it's a brand or a make. So, and then Zarathustra married 3 times and died of natural causes at 77. Or was assassinated by an opposing priest in retaliation for dismantling the religion of old. That's it.
Very nice. Thank you very much. We're going on to somebody, won't be as long as the last person was. I think that was probably the most I had for everybody. I did find this woman interesting. Needed to get a female up in here too as well. You know what? We are even going to be covering that next week, the week after that. Just spoiler alert for people that happen to catch this live that I'll leave up for a few days. Saints. Known saints that were quite openly into occultism, magic, and mysticism. Yo, there's a lot of women on that list. A lot, actually.
A lot.
They're like, fuck getting some dick, I'm going to go learn. Well, there's one of them that I'm covering that, knew the whole, the reason why she kind of ended up going where she went is because she knew it was a place that women could just go and basically study and study and study. And that's what she did.
That's awesome.
Yeah, she took advantage of it as a place to just fucking study constantly.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mary the Jewess. And I just have these little things to show. I don't have anything else, but I do got some notes. So we'll get into her. Mary the Jewess. Mary or Maria the Jewess, also known as Mary the Prophetess or Mary the Copt, was an early alchemist known from the works of Zosimos of Panopolis, person I just covered, and other authors in Greek alchemical tradition. On the basis of Zosimos' comments, she lived between the 1st and 3rd centuries AD in Alexandria. French Taylor and Littman lists her as one of the first alchemical writers, dating her works at no later than 1st century. She is credited with the invention of several kinds of chemical apparatuses and is considered to be the first true alchemist of the Western world. Through Zosimos, many of the beliefs of Mary the Jewess can be observed. Mary incorporated lifelike attributes into her descriptions of metals such as bodies, souls, and spirits. Mary believed that metals had 2 different genders, and by joining the 2 genders together, a new entity could be made. The primary source for the existence of Mary the Jewess within the context of alchemy is Zosimos of Panopolis, who wrote in the 4th century the oldest extant books on alchemy. Again, I'm kind of going over him a little bit, but he described several of Mary's experiments and instruments. So a lot of what I'm getting at in this whole thing is that, we are getting a lot from this guy as well, the person I spoke about before. And in his writings, Mary is almost always mentioned as having lived in the past, and she is described as one of the sages.
Wow.
Yeah. George Synkelus, a Byzantine chronicler of the 8th century, presented Mary as a teacher of Democritus, somebody I mentioned before, whom she had met in Memphis, Egypt during the times of Pericles. Mm-hmm. The 10th century Kitab al-Firist of Ibn al-Naim cited Mary as one of the 52 most famous alchemists and stated that she was able to prepare caput mortuum, a purple pigment. Now, if people think about that back in the day, purple went for a lot of money.
Yeah.
Especially depending on how you were making it. I mean, that really was like you were taking things from possibly living creatures, but, to make that stuff. Yeah. Depending on how you did it. So I find it interesting that she was involved in making purple pigment. And I mean, that even if that's in an occult little throw in there, that's very high up, purple.
Yeah.
The early medieval alchemical texts ascribed to an otherwise unknown Maurenius Romanus, and he called her Mary the Prophetess. And the Arabs knew her as the daughter of Plato, a name in which Western alchemical texts was used for white sulfur. One of Mary's Greek works, and only fragments survive as quoted by Zosimos, like I mentioned before, and by a few later authors. Some of the things that she is known for is the Axiom of Maria. The Axiom of Maria is a precept in alchemy. 1 becomes 2, and 2 becomes 3, and out of the 3rd comes the 1 as the 4th. It is attributed to 3rd century alchemist Maria, also called Mary the Jewess, or a sister of Moses. So, I mean, that's, to me, it's like very, I think we kind of hear that said other ways throughout other ideas of occultism. You know what I'm saying?
What's interesting is you see a lot of the writings from the Arabic world holding women as, like in their own right, and like professing how because with the one I'm talking about, the same thing. I mean, like they were like, they held Mary the Jewess very high up there, the Arab world, where you don't see that anymore in terms of like, how they view women. But back then, they held her in such high regard, at least the stuff that I came across too.
Yeah, and then she's also been known 7th century alchemist author called Christianos cited that what she said was 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 3, and by means of the 3rd and 4th achieves unity. Thus 2 are but 1. Marie Louise von Franz also gave an alternative version which states, out of the 1 comes 2, out of 2 comes 3, and from the 3rd comes the 1 as the 4th. So it seems to be like a reoccurring theme that gets kind of just changed a little bit here and there by other people. Mm-hmm. An interpretation of the axiom treats it as an aphorism for the feminine principle, earth and the regions under it, while also representing evil as interpolated between the uneven numbers of the Christian dogma. It's a little deep. Mm-hmm. Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung used the axiom as a metaphor for the process of individuation. 1 is unconscious wholeness. 2 is the conflict of opposites. 3 points to a potential resolution. The 3rd is the transcendent function, described as a psychic function that arises from tension between consciousness and the unconscious, and supports the union. And the 1 as the 4th is a transformed state of consciousness, relatively whole and at peace. Jung speaks of the axiom of Maria as running in various forms through the whole of alchemy. This progression from the number 4 to 3 to 2 to 1 is the axiom of Maria. The axiom of Maria may be interpreted as a alchemical analogy of the process of individuation from the many to the one, from the undifferentiated unconscious to individual consciousness. I don't know how true it is, but there is the triptychos, and there was a kind of alembic with 3 arms that used to be used to abstain substances purified by distillation. So like the thing that's up on the screen right now. Oh no, and not really, but I think like something sort of like that is kind of like, if people haven't seen what alchemical drawings start to look like, it all starts getting like crazy with stuff like that. So I think like what they're trying to get at is like something along those lines. And it's like a purified by distillation. It is not known whether Mary invented it, but Zosimos credits the first description of the instrument to her. And this triptychos, it is still used today in chemistry labs. In her writings, quoted by Zosimos, Mary recommends that copper or bronze used to make the tubes should be the thickness of a frying pan, and that the joints between the tubes and the still head should be sealed with flour paste.
That's
Yeah, I don't know.
That's awesome.
Kerotakis, an alchemical bath, which is what you're seeing on the side, is a device used to heat substances used in alchemy and to collect vapor. It is an airtight container with a sheet of copper upon its upper side. When working properly, all the joints form a tight vacuum. The use of such sealed containers in the Hermetic arts led to the term hermetically sealed. Still in use. The Kerotakis was said to be the replication of the process of formation of gold that was occurring in the bowels of the earth. The instrument was later modified by the German chemist Franz von Soxhlet in 1879 to create the extractor that bears his name, the Soxhlet extractor. So I do find that rather interesting that this lady is supposedly the person who came up with this.
I think, and do you notice how like some of these older ones, they'll say, well, I don't know if they really existed. I don't know if they were, really whatever, because nothing was written about them. Maybe they didn't think it was important to write about who they were, just their work. I mean, I don't know. But,
well, I think You know, and like I think this is done on multiple levels, in different ways. You know, like I've said, I think to you, just, you know, I'm not getting personal with things, but it's like, you know, I've seen in like true crime, sometimes I think people will try to humanize the shit out of the people involved in the story because it really kind of helps sell it better.
Right.
I also think there are people who will also just put their whole life or kind of like an image of their life or put themselves out there constantly to really humanize themselves, to really sell themselves to their listeners. So now, like, if you were really a magician and you're actually really worried about just getting stuff out there, you try to keep the least amount of, you know, don't worry about who the hell I am, actually. Just look at the fucking information.
Yeah, just look at
Stop
my work.
worshiping me. Look at the fucking information.
Yeah.
You know, the more I tell you about myself, the more you're going to construct this idolized vision in your head.
Yeah. And not pay attention to the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you put yourself out there because you have no work, you know, to show.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So Cleopatra the Alchemist was going to build upon. It's funny how you picked certain ones that I kind of picked, and we didn't even discuss who we were picking until the very end.
Yeah, yeah.
And when I'm picking them, I'm like, wow, this like links up back and forth to the ones that he picked. So Cleopatra the Alchemist was a Greco-Egyptian alchemist that experimented with practical alchemy. The time and place of her birth have said to have fallen between 1st and 4th centuries of the Common Era. She lived and was associated with the School of Alchemy in Alexandria, which was made famous by Mary the Jewess, and studied under her, and became a master alchemist under her. Cleopatra is credited as one of 4 female alchemists who could produce the Philosopher's Stone, which the other one was Mary Jewess, and invented or is attributed to contributing to the invention of the distillation apparatus called the alembic. While others cite Mary the Jewess had invented it, there are drawings of the apparatus that appear in both works of Cleopatra and Mary the Jewess in 3rd century of Common Era. I think what happened is that the school that they were at, they were using that stuff. Or Mary invented it. She probably was using it. And then they started putting in their lab notebook. And it was probably a place where they're actually legitly doing the separation of these chemicals. Whereas other people were theoretically doing it, just talking about it. Cleopatra adopted and expanded upon both the theoretical and practical aspects of Mary the Jewess' thought, but seemed to have focused more on the use of the alembic apparatus for distillation. So Cleopatra the Alchemist is not the same as Cleopatra of Egypt or Queen of Egypt. You know, Queen of Egypt came before, and then Cleopatra the Alchemist was much later. And also people have said that she's probably just a pseudonym or like a group of authors that used her name for it. A total of 3 alchemical texts linked to Cleopatra still exist. On weights of measures, gold making of Cleopatra, and a dialogue of Cleopatra and the philosophers. In regard to the work of On Weights and Measures, it deals with the practical aspects of alchemy. A system of uniform weights and measures was described in the text by which alchemists could use, share, and publish their findings to minimize the variation that would exist between regions or even laboratories. Apparently everybody was using their own system, and nobody was like, they didn't have a uniformed weighing system or measuring system. And so therefore the need for a universal system of weights and measures was needed. And I think it wasn't established until the 1600s. So, you know, it was a ways before then. The other work, Dialogue of Cleopatra and the Philosophers, discusses a meeting between a great woman sage and a group of her male peers, and she attempts to cast light on various natural mysteries. Her understanding of the material world amazed and terrified her audience, among them the mythic Ostanes, who taught Egyptian magic to the rest of the Hellenistic world. She goes on to make the analogy between the alchemist's goal of transmutation to the natural growth in plant and animal kingdoms, which, going back to what you were saying, it's more within, like the whole alchemical process. It is often said that her talks, literature, and teachings were void of any trace of male chauvinism. If anything, was always recognized for having men listen to her attentively. The philosophers in attendance and her peers declared that they had fallen into mystical ecstasy. Now that's a magician right there, making people fall in love with you as you speak. With just her words, and cry out, "Blessed be the womb that bore you," which is a phrase that had only been used with Jesus. So some of the topics she talked about is how transmutation can cause color change, and then the parallels between magic language and the process of Egyptian funeral rites in her methodology. So like if you, with the Philosopher's Stone and then the bodies of the pharaohs, if you put them through like a violent process, you're basically, the ultimate goal is to purify, transform, and then resurrect them into a new pure substance. So that's kind of one of her little attribute theories. This is also what you were just discussing, like the alembic system and then distillation process, and how it's kind of, I put pictures on there to show you how it has evolved over time. So alchemy was first developed as a technical craft and theoretical proto-science in Hellenistic Egypt. And they had the tenet, and I guess the basis of it was that the smallest unit of reality reflected the largest structures of reality. The macro was the micro and vice versa. And they mirrored each other, and hence why the whole seeking out to change or transmutate substances. A substance, when understood correctly, could be made to transform itself into another substance, because both physical and metaphysical were all composed of one divine substance. This was the core tenet of Cleopatra's alchemical theory and practice. So the greatest transmutations for ancient alchemists wasn't just about turning base metal into gold and silver, but rather turning plants and minerals into useful cures and medicines. So distillation, which we have up there, lies at the heart of the alchemist and its science. Producing spirits, which I thought was interesting, for the tincture of herbs required special equipment, and the alembic provided a means to obtain the solvent extract needed for producing the beneficial elixirs and medicinal stones. So let's see. The Cleopatra set out to create gold through chemical and scientific means versus theoretical. And in her magnum opus, Chrysiopeia of Cleopatra, contained both her life's work and purported coded guide to making the Philosopher's Stone. So she's kind of considered a foundational figure of alchemy, and Zosimos also mentions her and her use of the apparatus in the experiments. So I'm going to go through her most famous work, which is called Chrysiopeia, I think it's called, Gold Making of Cleopatra. And it consists of a single sheet of paper with only symbols, drawings, and captions. And it was one of the early scientific works authored and possibly ever written by a woman. The text is preserved on a single sheet of papyrus and is in the Netherlands Library of Leiden University. So attempts to decipher or crack the complicated, mysterious code of drawings and symbols have proven unsuccessful. Keep in mind that during this time, ancient Alexandria was bustling with scholars and potentially competing with the other, and everything was kind of coded in order to protect, I guess, like intellectual propriety or whatever. It didn't want anybody stealing and taking credit for it. So to get into the sheet of paper, I went ahead and I looked up each item, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. So the on the top left hand part of the document is the title of the work, and its items are going to basically describe the technique to produce alchemical gold. So the first image is a stylized version of the Ouroboros as two concentric rings containing text within them that look like a cipher wheel. The outer ring says, "One is the all, and by it the all, and in it the all, and if it does not contain the all, it is nothing." I found it odd how all the A's were capitalized, all the O's were capitalized, and then the N. I don't know, it stuck out to me. The inner ring says, "The serpent is one, he who has the venom with two compositions." And then inside the inner circle are the chemical symbols for gold, silver, and mercury. A serpentine tail coils off to the upper right and connects with a code-like looking sequence that, according to other texts, was in fact the sequence to produce gold and might have some magical symbolic basis. And then at the bottom of the cipher wheel is alchemical vessels, which were the distillation process apparatuses that were used during that time period for distillation.
You know, one
Go ahead.
quick thing I want to say. This also looks very familiar considering the book I was looking at yesterday, too. Just the shapes and the diagrams. I mean, I think if you were probably to look at the stuff again that I had sent you from it, a lot of
And
it just
compare.
like, a lot of like the circles and even like the stuff that's under that circle. I mean, they almost look like a beetle maybe or something. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's just very, very same type of style. You know, in the circles with the little writing in them, or just a bunch of circles connecting to other circles. You know, very plain like this. It's just very, very similar.
Interesting.
I think.
Interesting. I think it looks like a cipher of some sort, like just with pictures, especially with that cipher wheel. But I mean, again, it's I don't know. It's very ominous. Right? And not only that, everybody's in Alexandria at this point. Everybody's kind of, you know, into ciphers, they're into the grimoires, they're into magic, they're into alchemy, you know what I mean? All of this was going on at that time, and I believe the Ars Notoria, that was like 12th century or something like that, and it came out of Alexandria, was it? Did it? I don't remember. But everything has its basis in Alexandria, so like it was like this intellectual hub of where everything is rooted in. I don't know. Meaning like pedigrees, you know, like students studying under, you know, whatever, they're going to have remnants of that philosophy in their text, I think. Okay, so the next slide is there are 4 8-banded stars with crescent shapes above them, and believe that these are the pictorial depictions of turning lead into silver. And I think the one on the far right, to me, that looks like an eclipse. I don't think that's anything like a moon or anything, because a moon would look, I think, differently, or it would look like the moon that's inside of the cipher wheel, and that does not look like a moon. Like, you can tell it's not. To me, it looks like an eclipse. But and then the 8 pointed stars, or it again going
number 8 again.
So. Then this one I thought was very interesting. It's an image of an Ouroboros serpent devouring its tail with the saying, "All is one" inside. It is said that the Hermetic philosophy of nature and divinity is one unified substance, which allows for the possibility of the alchemical change. As mentioned earlier, all this is based on the underlying possibility to transform one substance into the other, and that every substance contains a dielectric opposite. So everything has its own, right, opposite. So hence the black and white image of the snake, as well as the dichotomy of its venom, which is called the pharmacon. It's both a poison and a cure. So like the poison, obviously, with snake venom, but the cure here recently in the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years, and even in antiquity, it was used as a painkiller. It's used as a painkiller now. It dissolves clots for strokes, and it lowers blood pressure. So, I mean, not only can it kill you, but it can also be so I thought that was interesting, the whole dichotomy of the snake, and then her black and white, or red and white.
I like that.
Contrast. The coiling of the snake may also represent the coiling or rotating movement of the liquids and vapors during distillation, also representative of the physical and metaphysical aspects of the process. So her drawings of the Ouroboros is cited as one of the oldest illustrations of the Ouroboros, apart from those that are found in Egypt. And Ouroboros is the infinity, and the script says all is one. And here is another one. It bears somewhat a resemblance to the symbol of the homunculus. The homunculus is made from a philosopher's stone in relation to an Ouroboros. So I thought that was interesting to throw in. Maybe not. I don't know. That was kind of my guess.
What I would think.
Yeah. So let me see. And then the final one is the apparatus is possibly a hybrid between the alembic and the karutakis. In the center of the apparatus is a delta, meaning change, which is probably either where, or for example, an unprocessed mercury was placed and subsequently changed. Beneath the apparatus seems to say something to the effect of flames in Greek. Obviously, I don't know Greek. to indicate heating or roasting of the contents inside the apparatus by where the vapor rises up the center tube into the receiving vessel, which is usually a bowl saucer or a still head affixed with 2 descending tubes, and apparently at the end of it there's a warning to not touch. It possibly served as a foundation for Islamic mercury sulfur theory in terms of this apparatus. And so at that time, you think about how mercury would have been found, and it was only available as cinnabar or as mercury sulfide. So you had to break it down. You had to burn it off. You had to distill it. That was the only way you were going to get mercury to use. So you had to come up with a method in order to isolate it and separate the liquid from the metal. So hence these distillation apparatuses. And then my final one is so the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus somewhat serves as an instructor's manual for experimenting with alchemy, but only alludes to the process of evaporation and condensation through a thick veil of symbolism. That was a quote I pulled. Well, in Cleopatra's diagram of the alembic, she seems to offer up an easier way for the practitioner to understand alchemy without fully revealing the entire meaning of the tablet. So this is kind of analogous to like a pharmaceutical company publishing, and not behind a paywall, the most valuable medicinal patent for the sheer sake of humanity. I mean, imagine she'd have kept this, how famous or how much money or whatever she could have done, but instead she published it. So, I don't know, I thought that was pretty interesting. So, yeah. That's all I got for her.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Thank you very much. That was good. You know what was funny? I actually had looked at her first.
Oh, yeah?
And chose Mary over her because I didn't think I was going to be able to do a good job of covering her. Because it was actually kind of hard to actually find, like, really any substance about her.
You had to dig.
In my opinion, yeah.
You had to dig.
Yeah.
I spent most of the time looking for information.
A lot of times you're getting the same legit one paragraph.
And they're all copying each other.
Yes, so I was going to say. And I was like, you know what? I found enough on her already. That was just interesting, you know. So that was a really good job. You know, somebody had mentioned before in the chat. I mean, to me, like, I'm thinking like, oh yeah, they might be right. I do, you know, I haven't seen it in a while, but if anybody, Clockwork Orange, they're saying that some of these things up here look like I designed, that he might have been, I guess, that main character. If I do remember correctly, I think there was a couple of parts where there was like drawn shit on their face. You know, it's so funny. If you like, I go back. If you were to go back and watch that movie now, and not be so like, oh my god, just over like the whole weird movie, and actually looked at every little thing in that movie, you'd be like, yo, why is like, because I never noticed until recently, one of the last times I saw it, I was like, why does the dude got makeup on his eyes? Like, what's, you know, who the hell does that when I don't know, it was just weird to me, and I just started thinking, you know, there's like a lot more symbolism in this movie than I think is like even noticed. I think there's a bunch in that movie, honestly.
Yeah. That's crazy.
But yeah, that might be maybe something that's due to it, or if anything, at least it looks like the contraption that kept your eyes open.
Yes, it does, right? That's what I thought too. But I was like, no, I'm all focused eye right now, so
so who
I'm
knows?
only thinking that. But no, it's true.
Yeah, very weird. All right, here we go. So Johannes Reuchlin, supposedly. There we go. It's supposedly 1516 engraving. And then that on the right-hand side is his coat of arms. So that was interesting. And he was supposedly from the 29th of January, 1455 to the 30th of June, 1522. And him, sometimes called Johannes, was a German Catholic humanist and a scholar of Greek and Hebrew, whose work also took him to modern-day Austria, Switzerland, Italy, and France. Most of Reuchlin's career centered in advancing German knowledge of Greek and Hebrew. You know, one thing to say, too, I mean, kind of with like a lot of other occultists that, in my opinion, that learned from these people, you still see, I don't know if sometimes I think that maybe the storyline of why they're going there is maybe a little off. But like these people are bouncing all over too. I mean, look at Crowley and Dee. I mean, they bounced all over the world.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, you're right.
Just who knows? It was just a different story for why they did it. Let me get back into it. It was most of his career centered on advancing German knowledge of Greek and Hebrew. He was born in Pforzheim in the Black Forest in 1455, where his father was an official of the Dominican monastery. Here he began his Latin studies in the monastery school in about 1470, and it was only for a short time. And then he didn't feel that the university was teaching him. It was teaching him very little. And then basically his career as a scholar appears to have turned almost on accident. His voice gained him a place in the household of Charles I, Margrave of Baden, and soon, having some reputation as a Latinist, he was chosen to accompany Frederick, the third son of the Prince of the University of Paris. So basically, it was like, because I knew this person, I got here.
Yeah.
But then again, it could also be like maybe you're recognized, again, like an occultist, I think will know another one is, because they'll understand the same language of their art, what they're trying to show, that other people who haven't had the experience won't understand.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it could even be because of that. He now began to learn Greek, which had been taught in the French capital, and he also attached himself to the leader of the Paris realists, Jean A. Lapide, if I said that right, a worthy and smart, pretty smart guy, considering that going by what they think. And he followed the guy to the University of Basel in 1474, and he kind of was like someone that influenced him. At Basel, Reuchlin took his master's degree in 1477. So we got there 1474, took his thing in 1477, and began to lecture and teaching a more classical Latin than was common in German schools. He also tried explaining as Aristotle in Greek. His studies in the language had been continued at Basel under Andronicus Cantublacus. In Basel, he made the acquaintance of the bookseller Johann Amerbach, for whom he prepared a Latin lexicon, and that was written in 1475 and 1476, which ran through many editions. By 1477, Reuchlin had left Basel to seek further Greek training with George Herminimus in Paris, to learn how to write in Greek too. And it might be to support himself by copying manuscripts. And now he felt that he must choose a profession, so he chose to take law up. And thus was led to the Great School of Orleans in 1478. And then, and just really, I'm not going to go too much into the guy because of time constraints. I probably deleted like 3 paragraphs of things as we were going. I actually took up a lot more time than I thought. I'm the first guy. But to cut some other stuff down, he appears to have married, but little is even known about his married life. He left no children, supposedly. And at Heidelberg, Reuchlin had many private pupils that he taught, among whom Franz von Sickingen is the best known name, in case anybody has ever heard of that name. Probably not. I haven't.
I have not.
This I thought was interesting. I mean, they got this guy on a coin. Johann Reuchlin's 400th anniversary of his death, 1922 medal.
Damn.
And that was the reverse side on the other side of it. So, I mean, this guy had a medal. And he also has the Arte Cabalistica Libis Trace. I'll put that up here, and then actually here we'll go through it real quick, and then I'll get into it. So this is just some of the images from it. Again, I saved this, like kind of before where I had the stars on the side. This has these little dots before. If we go by things that we had even covered in ciphers, those dots could start meaning things.
Yeah.
So, like, even the stuff written on the side, I find it, could that be, like, ways of giving keys or ideas? I don't know. That was something that I actually forgot to ask, but I was thinking yesterday when I was at Yale. I was like, I doubt the people behind the counter are even going to know. But I had wanted to ask them, like, there's some pictures that I have that I don't think is literally really part of the art, where it's tiny, tiny writing, like alongside, like a paragraph.
Yeah.
Was that original or has that been added?
I wonder if it's been added because it was.
But it's like I don't think these people are gonna know. They're gonna be like, I don't know. It's Yale's book.
No, I'm assuming that it was in a private collection before, and got donated. That's how I'm assuming they acquire these books. And somebody took the liberty of themselves and jotted down.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was not. I was under the assumption that might be like after the book was written.
I think so. I don't know. I mean, that'd be interesting to know, though.
And here we go. Just to show here, it goes into Hebrew.
Nice.
Yes. Yeah. Wasn't much on him like visually, but I do just think it's also interesting that he was into Kabbalah. So let me get back into it. 1517 was when this book came out. De Arte Kabbalistica Libri Trace. The scarce first edition and fine copy of Reuchlin's Kabbalistic Studies, La Bible de la Kabbale Christienne. This work is written in the form of a conversation between the Jew, Simon, and the Muslim, Moranus. I even thought that was interesting when I was doing this. I was like, wow, the Jews and the Muslims having a conversation right now.
Yeah. Apparently it happened, like, at a certain time. Everybody was talking to each other.
Well, no, I'm just saying they're really having a conversation right now, too, aren't they?
Oh.
And the Pythagorean Philolaus. No, I was just like, it was just weird how, like, I came across that, and it's like, there's shit going on with them right now, supposedly. Promoted among the Christian humanists in the Renaissance by Pico della Mirandola, who was somebody that was rather interesting that I was going to cover in this, but I'm just going to completely leave that out. We'll probably go over 2 hours, and I'm not trying to do that now. It culminated in the works of Johannes Reuchlin. De Verbo Mirifico from 1494, and De Arte Kabbalistica from 1517, some of like his major works. In De Arte Kabbalistica, Reuchlin incorporated Pythagorean ideas on number mysticism and metapsychosis, notions which Pythagoras shared with Kabbalah and which made him a Greek Kabbalist. Reuchlin describes as the Kabbalah as an alchemia, internalizing external perceptions into images and thoughts and eventually into light. The process of becoming like God is symbolized by the position of Adam Kadmon in the middle of the Sephiric tree. Reuchlin promoted the study of Greek and is credited with introducing Neo-Latin comedy into his native Germany. But it is his pioneering study of Hebrew language and Kabbalah that the latter had undertaken the Aegis of Pico, which gained him lasting significance. So he basically took up like a different name too. Mm-hmm. He used his extensive... It's like... It's so funny. It's like Masons do that now. They just change the name and become famous. Everywhere.
Yeah.
He used his extensive travels to make contacts with other humanists and other Jews and to acquire manuscripts and printed books for his library. And that was one of the most... And his library is considered one of the most substantial of its time. Yeah, I just thought that was a little bit of some interesting stuff about him. It was just somebody who was into, Kabbalah back that long too. 15, 17. And then I'll you can go, and then I'm just
Okay.
gonna leave my last one out because this will go way too long.
Okay. So the last one I'm going to do is Ostanes the Alchemist. And it's a bit of a controversy with this guy because he may or may not have existed, even though he's referenced all over the place. Ostanes the Alchemist was a legendary mage in classical and medieval literature. He is first mentioned by Hermodorus, a disciple of Plato, as one of the names common in the line of magi that ran from Zoroaster down to Alexander's conquest. He dates Zoroaster 5,000 years before the fall of Troy and puts Ostanes first among the names of members of the line. Most of the information that you get from Ostanes is by Pliny the Elder. Pliny, in his Natural History, was skeptical of the pretended succession, but thought the first man to write an extant account of magic, which is identified with the practice of the Magi, was an Ostanes who had accompanied Xerxes on his expedition to Greece. Ancient Persia was witness to numerous scientific activities that led to the development of science and knowledge in later historical eras in Persia and outside Persian territory. Ostanes is an example of such great scientific figures. The works of Xerxes Ostanes made the Greeks rabid to learn more of the subject. Pythagoras, Democritus, Plato, and the like traveled to study and returned to teach it. This information probably came from Alexandrian scholarship, which had also produced the works of Ostanes that Pliny had read or read about. Pliny refers to Ostanes as describing the different sorts of magic, divination from water, air, stars, lamps, and other instruments, as well as necromancy, the use of human bodies of various animal substances for divination and medicine. From the end of the 1st century on, he is often referred to as an authority on necromancy and other forms of divination, astrology, and the manufacture of amulets, and the secret names and magical properties of plants and stones. These references are commonly supposed to reflect works fathered on him in the Hellenistic period. No doubt that they often do so, but forgery did not stop the Roman annexation of Alexandria, and both Ostanes' legend and his literary output increased through these imperial times. So during the Byzantine period, a lot of great authorities in alchemy and much medieval alchemical material circulated under his name. So that was interesting that people have said that it's probably just a pen name. It probably was a compilation of authors, but yet he's probably one of the most quoted in terms of teaching magic to the outside world outside of Egypt. It was a pen name used by several pseudo-anonymous authors of Greek and Latin from the Hellenistic period onwards, and together with pseudo-Zoroaster and pseudo-Histapis, Ostanes belongs to the group of pseudo-epigraphical Hellenistic mages,
yeah.
that is in a long line of Greek and other Hellenistic writers who wrote under the name of famous magians. While pseudo-Zoroaster was identified as the inventor of astrology, and pseudo-Hespastus was stereotyped as an apocryphic prophet. Ostanes was imagined on to be a master sorcerer. So yeah. And then I have this last one, which is basically...
Is it like apocryphic prophet?
That's what it is.
Yeah. Okay. Apocryphic.
I misspelled it. That's probably
prophet.
What it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other episode where I butcher all the words. So once the Magi had been associated with magic, it was but a natural progression that the Greeks' image of Zoroaster would metamorphosize into a magician too. In the 1st century of the Common Era, Pliny the Elder placed the responsibility of introducing the dark arts to the Greek and Roman worlds to the magus Ostanes, to whom most of the pseudo-epigraphic magical literature was attributed. That, in quotes, while universal consensus says that magic began with Zoroaster, as far as Pliny says, he could determine Ostanes was the first extant writer of it. So, yeah, that's pretty much all of that on Ostanes. It's kind of theoretical, kind of, he said, she said. But they attribute him to being the one that brought all the magic to the outside world outside of Egypt.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So.
It's interesting as hell to me. Very well done. And that perfectly timed it around an hour and a half.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that's why I kind of wanted to keep it. I thought we might have been able. Listen, I was going for the whole number 8, 4 each, the magician, Toth,
Yeah.
But we got stuck at 6, perfect balance and beauty. I'm fine with that as well.
Okay, great. I'm good with that.
See, I mean, I literally even was like, oh, let's do 4 each. Because and
I think because when you look them up, some of the information was so obscure, you're not going to have anything to talk about with them. So, but no, yeah.
Yeah, but trying to go with the magician. Worked out perfect at Tifereth.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you spending the time to cover this topic with me again.
This was awesome.
Yeah. I'm really hoping the Saints one. I'm hoping that one should be pretty interesting. Hopefully, I won't butcher my end up as much. Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot of hard words in there. But yeah, that should be as interesting as well. I'm hoping. Yes, I mean, so far from what I've looked at, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I was like, oh man, I didn't know this.
Yeah, I think it was when you brought up the topic, I was like, wait, I think you're right. And so we started Googling some names, and I was like, oh, wow, yeah, they were.
Yeah,
they are.
The thing was, too, is I had noticed it, going through, trying to, cover some of this. Mm-hmm. And I was like...
And there were saints.
I was like, how many saints were occultists? And you, can literally find a list if you just go.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow, look at that. And then I was like, there's a fuck ton of women on here, too. I was like, good for you.
Or maybe that was their wig. That's how they could hide. Under, it's stamped and labeled by the Catholic Church.
Yeah.
We endorse this message.
Yeah, well, we were going over stuff like that in the,
the grimoires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even I think some of the people that we mentioned in the other series, part 2, when we started going over some of the people that had ciphers and stuff, I think even some of them we had mentioned that they had wrote stuff and either the church didn't like it or they got their stamp of approval.
Yeah.
Them.
Well, I think it was the Exorcist one, the one that was actually being done by priests themselves. They were like, no, we don't like this. We're revising it. We're rewriting it. This isn't how we want to put it out there. But.
All right, and that is the end of this episode. Thank you, everybody, for jumping in on the live. That is what's up. I saw a lot of the usual suspects in the chat, and I love it. I love seeing you all come back. I really appreciate some of the kind words in there as well, especially Dang. He told me he listens to this stuff twice because there's so much info. That made my day right there.
That's so nice.
Because there's other show. It just, I appreciate hearing that, I guess. I'm trying to put out as much information as possible. Try to enlighten some minds. And, that is the end of this one. Thank you, everybody in the chat. Thank you again, Lisa. And, hopefully not next Friday because I will be gone for a few days. Not next week, but the Friday after that, we should be doing another live then. This live will be up for a day or two, and then it will come down, and then it will re-drop when the episode comes out. So these lives are kind of just like an early preview as well for the hardcore fans that I see, listeners that I have been seeing coming back every week since we've been doing it. So, thank you because it's getting me to go live more often. And until the next one, everybody be well. Later.